Welcome to Hunter and the Sphinx, chapter 9. At the end of last chapter, they'd finished their ambushing of the Vargal forces and retreated in the face of Golga's magical power. As they finished settling all of the wounded into the bottom of the great tree in the meadow, they began to set up their weapons and get in position for their last stand against the Vargal. Well, it didn't take too long for them they were almost already ready. The Hunter and the Sphinx each set up a heavy caliber plasma rifle in the upper chamber. They're hoping to be able to make good use of them against the Vargal once they broke through the barrier. As they were finishing and ready, Hunter asked the Sphinx, "So, you sure you can use that thing?" Well, I am a Sphinx. I can do many things. Yes, but that is a heavy plasma rifle. Have you used one before? No. But you pointed at the Vargal and pulled this little cookie thing here, right? Yes. Yes, do that. Point and pull. No problem. And pretty soon you hear the sound of shuffling outside of the barrier as more and more of the Vargal forces began to gather outside and surround the clearing. Oh boy, there's a lot of them. Soon after that, began to hear and almost feel rhythmic pulsing chanting coming from outside. The stomping of many feet in rhythm with each other. Uh-oh. Well, it appears they are all working in concert to amplify somebody's efforts to break the barrier. One could assume that would be Golga. And sure enough, as time went on, the rhythmic chanting and stomping became louder and more frantic. It didn't happen quickly. Morgana's barrier was very strong and powerful. However, over the course of time, eventually began to see faint spiderweb crackling in the air. Uh-oh, won't be long now. Everyone get ready. All the magical creatures that were still able to fight, taking up their defensive positions. Sure enough, the spiderweb cracks begin to widen and expand, and with the screeching, tearing sound, the barrier collapsed and a flood of Vargal streamed into the meadow. Hunter and Sphinx opened up with their heavy calibered weapons. The creatures that had ranged weaponry let loose with what they had. Morgana, from the inside, began to launch some area of effect attacks at those forces streaming in. Not to mention all the spike traps and other various things that were lying in wait for the Vargal as they rushed in. Pretty soon, hundreds turned into thousands of deaths as the Vargal were eliminated in swift order. However, there were too many of them. As they kept piling over the fallen corpses of their comrades, They began to reach the defenders, and soon the defenders began to fall one after the other as Vargol reached them with their spears and their talons and began to dismantle the defenders of the tree. Speaking of trees, I don't think I'm going to be able to get up. Yeah, I'm not going to go on that tree. We'll skip that tree. Back this way. I turned the Sphinx had to replace the power packs and their blasters several times as they unloaded them into the oncoming Vorgol hordes. Meanwhile, Golga was watching from just beyond the clearing, laughing to himself. That's right, fools. Rush in and sacrifice yourself for my plans. That's the only thing you're worth in doing in life. He watched as the defenders began to fall. I think I'll wait for the next time those stupid rifles pause to reload, and then I will make my move. Sure enough, the next time, the hunter who was facing the direction Golga was paused to replace the power pack in his plasma rifle. Golga strode forward and with a short burst of magical energy teleported over to the entrance of the tree. Hunter blinked. He was pretty sure he knew where Golga was, and suddenly he wasn't there. Uh-oh. I think Golga might have just made his move. And sure enough, just as maybe the words left his mouth, you could feel space begin to distort around them. Oh, there, Tian. Something's going on. As they were feeling that, in the upper chamber, Golga was striding towards Morgana. So, Golga, you've shown your ugly mug at last. Morgana, you always were the most troublesome of the four of us. Too smart for your own good. I knew I'd have to get to the others before I could reach you. Well, that is true. Of course, I wouldn't have known you were up to anything at all if you hadn't gathered all the stones together, but I'd hidden mine away for centuries. Well, old Admiral Plo, he was... I think he was pretty much loopy already. I think I might have done him a favor ending his miserable existence. Pretty much walked up to him and he was doing some weird dance in a castle of miniature stones, and I don't know what the heck was going on in his head anymore, but he surrendered his precious stone without much of a fuss. Oh, Chloe, she was so happy to see me, she gave me a big hug. Well, I gave her a hug too. 2 arms around the back, 2 arms with knives into her back. You should have seen her face. So surprised she was. And now, as for you, Morgana, you and all your precious little creatures that ever tried so valiantly to defend yourselves, well, there's nothing that's going to save you now. We shall see about that. And with that, Morgana launched a ferocious magical attack on Golga. Golga, of course, having power of 3 stones and centuries preparing for this, easily defended against her attacks and began to launch a magical assault of its own. Mightily they struggled as their space began to warp around them to such a degree that up and down were a bit of abstract concepts for a period of time. As the two mighty powerhouses held their contest of magic, Golga began to stride purposefully towards Morgana. It's coming soon, Morgana. A few more steps. And sure enough, despite her valiant efforts, Morgana was unable to stop Golga from reaching her. One meaty paw clamped around her neck, another tore her magical stone from around her neck. This is the end for you, Morgana. Meanwhile, Hunter and Tian had began to attempt to reach Morgana as they figured Golga was on premises. However, with reality being so distorted, this was a bit of a difficult process. Finally, Tian grabbed Hunter's hand and said, "Hold on to me. I will use my powers to ignore the way everything is distorting around us and take a direct route to her." Okay, this is some crazy stuff going on. Wow, it's a bit like Doctor Strange when he was bending reality. Doctor Who? Oh, you don't know your Earth history. Never mind. Let's go. And as they tried to make their way down the stairs, well, up and down were being interchanged liberally. They eventually reached the chamber where Lady Morgana was having her body thrown to the side by Golga. "No!" Hunter yelled. "Ow, Morgana!" the Sphinx cried. Golga smirked at them and placed the fourth stone into his breastplate. At last, after centuries of planning, I am going to go back to my world. You are too late. And she couldn't do anything to stop me either. Golga began to cast his magical spell. Hunter and the Sphinx gazed in horror as the glowing ball of magical energy began to expand around Golga. Reality was still a bit of a tenuous concept, but they raced forward as best they could, and with a mighty leap dove at the ball of energy enveloping Golga. As their bodies touched the glowing mass of magic, all of the distorted reality that they had been experiencing was replaced by an even greater distortion as time, space, their whole sense of self and reality all was stretched and skewed and pulled every which way, and their minds went black. To be continued.